things started to really transform for me when I read through the gospel straight for the first time. It was almost like it was the first time I was really experiencing Jesus and what he said and how effective he was and how dynamic he was just as like as an individual who actually lived on earth. And I don't know, something changed in me when I read through the gospels for the first time, and it seems like that was also the case for you.
Well, for me, like when I first went to mass, it was the first time I'd seen anyone cross themselves. It's the first time I'd ever seen communion. It's the first time I'd ever seen the crucifix, like really looked at a crucifix before. First time I'd ever seen the Stations of the Cross. First time I'd ever seen anybody other than Tim Tebow genuflect. Like it was it was total culture shock, man. It was crazy going to mass for the first time. I was only going there because the pretty girl that I was trying to impress was like, you got to come to mass with me. This is the most important, Jesus is the most important person in my life. The church is really important to me. Like you've got to at least be comfortable. Like she asked me to mass, and I was like, I don't even know what mass is, but you're really pretty, and I'm just gonna say yes to whatever you tell me to do. And then I'm like sitting there and on a Sunday, and I'm listening to the Gospels, and it's like, come again? Like what? Jesus says what? Like all throughout the Gospels, you hear the phrase, and the people were astounded by Jesus. Me in my confused Jew brain, who had never ever encountered the Gospels before, had this image of flowery, fluffy Jesus, like almost hippie Jesus, and all white and gentle and walking through and being just sort of meek and mild and like really soft with people, looking at his number one, his right hand man, and going, "Get behind me, Satan." Or like looking at me through the words of the Gospels and being like, "Yeah, your life is hard. Guess what? Deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. I'll show you where to go. I'll show you how to make the most of whatever it is you're carrying." Like, that's not meek and mild. That's not this like fluffy, foofy, just love people nonsense that I would hear from Christians all the time. And some of the crazy Christianity that I experienced growing up in Northwest New Jersey. It was like, who's this guy? I want more of that. And then opening up the Bible and really reading through the Gospels, in particular reading Matthew. Matthew gives all of Jesus's essential teachings. And it if you've never read it from front to back, if you've never sat down and just read a gospel, it is knock your socks off. It really is. It will challenge you and it will push you in ways that no other piece of reading will ever do. It's that compelling, that challenging, that eye-opening, that jarring, that inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I
Was
think
there a passage for you? Like, is there one that sticks out in your mind that was like, mm, that encounter or that passage, I'll never be able to shake that. That walks with me. That walks and talks with me, or that walked and talked with me when I was first encountering it in ways that nothing else had.
there's a few. I would say this though. So I actually I had an iPad at the time that I read it on, and this was like kind of right when I got done in college. And what happened was is like the version that I read, I think I read the New American Bible Revised Edition just on an iPad. And for some reason, every single time Jesus spoke, so all of the quotes that Jesus had in it were highlighted red. So like even what he was saying like jumped out even more so just because of how they had the text formatted in the version that I was reading. Um, the quotes I will never be able to shake. So the first is, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Come
Mm,
share in your master's joy." And I have that quote written down in so many different places, but ultimately for me, that quote right there is basically the goal that I have for my life is I want those to be like the final things that I hear. Like as I'm dying, when my life is said and done, I want to hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Come share in your master's joy."
mm.
Um, Another one that hits me. I mean, Gospel of John. I probably repeat this quote every single day, but "Remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. Without me, you can do nothing.
Mhm.
And Jesus as the vine, or God as the vine, and us having to remain on it in order so that we can bear fruit, and we can bear fruit that will remain. Otherwise, we can do nothing. Is just something that I just constantly go back to over and over again. And I think that's extremely relevant in our culture. I mean, you touched on what everybody struggles with nowadays: anxiety, depression, addiction, abuse. I mean, whatever it may be. We're detached from the vine, um, as a society and as a culture, and we are just not going to bear the fruit that we need to bear, or you are not going to experience what you need to, that protection, that defense of all of the things in this world, unless you are secure and remain on the vine. So again, that theme of remaining on the vine, remaining on the path, um, enter through the narrow gate. Like, the way is wide and the path is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter it are many. um, the way is narrow, and the gate is wide that leads to life, and those who find it are few. I mean, I would say again, those three are probably three of my most favorite. But again, you said it. It's challenging. It's inspiring, and it's not this floofy, fluffy, lovey-dovey, hippie, um, stuff. Like, that's not what it is. Like, that's not what Christianity is. That's not what Christ is. That's not what God is. And um, again, we've detached from what that reality is in our modern world right now.
There's so many good things about what you shared. One of my favorites is, in the middle piece, you're essentially talking about capacity. Like, you want to have the capacity to be able to handle the responsibilities of your life, and not even just handle them, but to truly rise to the occasion of them. And and one of the things that we've done, kind of a poor job of as a church is really communicating why following the way of Jesus, why I would want to do that. And to me, one of the most compelling reasons for the modern person of today is the expansion of capacity. So Thomas Aquinas talks about this. He's like, your choices, your choices shape who you become. And the way that John Paul II talks about that is like, you have self-determination. You're a co-author of your life, and your choices actually shape who you're becoming in real time. Like, your choices, it's not like, oh, your choices don't matter, they don't impact you. It's like, no, no, no. Every time you make a choice, big or small, it's actually you determining who you're becoming. But St. Thomas Aquinas, he's like, every decision you make expands or constricts your soul. So when you think about, it's a taboo word now that turns people off, like sin. When you start talking about sin, like, why is the church so against sin? It's not because the church is like, I want to rule your life or dictate terms in your life. It's like, because the church is dedicated to you having the highest capacity soul you could conceivably have. That with every decision toward virtue that you make, every time you're patient instead of selfish, every time that you are kind when you could be mean, every time you make of your life a gift when you could shrink in fear, like, your capacity for life, your actual soul, the meeting place of God and humanity within you is expanding. It's growing. Like, think about it like the Grinch, right? Like, the Grinch does something really selfless for the first time, and what happens? His heart grows. Okay? That's a communication of a spiritual reality. That's a metaphor of a spiritual reality. When you actually, because your wife had a tough time last night, when you actually set your alarm clock 10 minutes early to go down and make her a cup of coffee, it is actually soul expansive for you to do that, for you to sacrifice sleep, to think about another person, to go and do something for them out of the generosity of your own heart. It literally expands your capacity for life and for love. So when we talk about, like, hey, don't have sex before marriage, it's not because we don't want you to have pleasure. It's not because we don't want you to have fun. It's because, like, that's one of the most soul expanding experiences that you can have. The ability to abstain up to the point of marriage. It is soul expanding and soul enriching, and you actually become a much stronger, more capable person. So many people in life don't feel capable of living the life that they have. We have a phrase for it now. They're like, I can't adult. right? How many young people do you hear it's like, oh, adulting is so hard? What? No, it's not that adulting is so hard, it's that your capacity for life is so small. And you have been failed by the people around you to challenge you and encourage you to increase your own capacity for life. That's the problem. Adulting is not that hard. Your capacity is just so small.
Hmm. I really like that. So where I want to go with that is this is a theme that I touch on a lot in a lot of my content, but like when we talk about Christianity, we're not just talking about some arbitrary set of rules for a primitive people to constrain your life. Like as I love the way that you put that. It's it expands your capacity and it opens up your soul. It moves you toward your potential. Like when we're talking about like we use this word Christianity and we use these terms, of what we're talking about is actually the best way to live for I say all living things, but especially for human beings. Like in the Gospel of John, he talks about Christ as the Logos, which is that through which all came into being. Like God created everything through the Word, through the Logos. So it would follow that everything that is aligned with this Logos, with Christ, would align itself properly with the best way to live. Right. So it's like, and then you mentioned sin. Like any sin is just a I love the definition of sin that I really like is just missing the mark. If we have this way that we must go, this path towards life, anything that takes us off that path or distracts us or kind of holds us back or suppresses us would be sin. And the interesting thing is we don't just see that spiritually in the world. Like the effects of sin have like actual like physical and societal and mental consequences on us. Like we suffer because of sin. Um, we also suffer not because of sin, but we'll table that for a second. But when it all comes down to it, like when we are talking about Christianity, we're talking about the best way to live. We're talking about the narrow way. We're talking about remaining on the path, on the vine. And we're talking about remaining in Christ, who is the Logos through which everything was created, right? So when you do that, you then experience, I guess you can say, the benefits of remaining on that path. You bear fruit. You gain a defense and protection in the face of the suffering and malevolence and the evil of this world. And here's what I'd say. I think that's actually, I think people, especially, I think people, young people, older people across our culture are actually starting to recognize this. I think they're actually starting to recognize that, oh shoot, like this thing that we call Christianity, or even all of these kind of sacraments that we practice, like in Catholicism, like I thought they were meaningless. I thought they were pointless. I thought they were just something that we kind of went through the motions on Sundays or throughout the week. Like I didn't think confession was this important, but then when you actually, but now what we're seeing, it's like, oh wait, those things actually may be really, really important for me to thrive as a human being in reality.
You said so many things in there. Really, I want to start with the idea of the best way to live. And how you're referring to the best way to live. Here's one of my favorite ways to look at this as Jesus as the best way to live, um, and the path set by by Jesus's life, his teaching, his decisions, his way of being, his way of interacting. Think about it like this: every great sinner's story is the same. It's actually really boring. Like every great sinner's story is the exact same. Think about the mafia boss. Every mafia boss movie, yeah, like there's action and there's things that are up and down and twists and turns, but it's always the same plot. It's a guy who starts manipulating people, who rises to power. He's narcissistic. He's violent. He's aggressive. He cheats on his girl. He probably is physically like abusive toward the girl and gets caught and goes to jail or gets shot and dies. Like I just literally told you the plotline story of every mafia boss who has ever lived. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. Every sinner story is the same. Like you go to a college campus and you're like, I could recognize this life that you're living everywhere. It's boring. You live the life everybody else lives. And it's because you're living by the same set of principles of this sort of vanilla, this is what's acceptable, this is what's posh in the moment, comfortable way of existing. Okay, let's contrast that with the greatest figures in the history of Christianity. Every single one of their lives looks completely different. I cannot give you a straight line story that encompasses Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Maximilian Kolbe, John Paul II, Mother Teresa, Therese of Lisieux. Their lives look completely different. Think about under one banner of Christianity, the difference between Saint Francis and Thomas More. Like they're totally different countries, totally different languages, totally different ways of relating to Christianity, totally different expressions of it, yet completely vibrant lives. They lived life to the full and they expressed who they truly were. Not like, oh, you were the best version of the worst type of person. Therefore, you got whatever accolades or you got to the top of whatever. No, they all look the same. All the men who are 60 years old with a lot of money in their pockets, driving a pretty nice car, their lives all look the same. They all look the same. But when you follow Jesus, you actually live your true, authentic life, and it looks like nothing else in human history. Like that's how we, that's how I like to lead. That's how we ought to lead. Most people's first step toward God is a selfish one. And that selfish one is if you want to find out who you really are, Jesus is the way. It's why he can say something so contradictory or seemingly contradictory as like, he who saves his life will lose it. He who loses his life will gain it. Like, what does that mean? It's like, oh, when you give your life to Jesus, he gives it back to you in a way that's the most authentic version of you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I actually think it's totally inadequate to say that that sin is missing the mark. So we talk about suffering in the suffering that occurs from sin. All right, like let's say you had an affair. You have like six kids. Do you have six kids?
I have five.
You have five kids. Okay, you have five kids, right? You have a beautiful wife. You have an affair. You sin, right? What if I said to your wife, don't worry about it. Zach just missed the mark, right? It's a totally inadequate expression, right? Let's say you left the family for this other woman, and I go to your five kids, and I'm like, yeah, your dad just missed the mark by abandoning you, right? No way. There's no way anybody feels when they're on the other side of sin. There's no way that they feel like they just missed the mark. I was accompanying this guy and he was separated from his family. He and his wife divorced and he basically became estranged to his kids because of the choices that he made. You think he feels like he missed the mark? No, he literally feels like he shot an arrow. Not only did it miss its target, but it pierced the heart of every single one of his kids, turned around, came back, and hit him square in the chest. And he's lying on the floor bleeding, being like, what did I just do? Right? Like, that is sin.
Okay.
That is the
Well,
impact of
to
sin.
clarify, so I agree with you in that it may be inadequate. Nonetheless, it's still accurate. So if God basically, if you have a purpose and a vocation that has been given to you by God, and you go and you do those things, all those things that you had mentioned, and yes, destroy your relationships with your wife and your kids and all that stuff. You did miss the mark, but I agree with you in that yes, the way that you phrase it does make it seem somewhat inadequate. Nonetheless, it's true. You did miss the mark. You did wander off the path that God expects of you, that God made you for. I mean, however you want to say it. Um, but I agree. It's not a sufficient definition of sin. I mean, yeah, the ultimately what it comes down to is the consequences of missing the mark are severe. I mean, again, you make these decisions. We make these decisions in our lives, and when you when you sin, when you miss the mark, when you betray God, when you betray the vocation that He gave you, there are real and severe consequences to it. And I think I think you're making that point, which I do agree with.
I think of it more like spiritual physics than God being like, "Oh, you're not doing what I'm doing. Consequences." It's not necessarily like that. God's like, "Hey, here's the path. Here's the path to life to the full. And if you go outside of that path, it's like if I suddenly decided to start living as if gravity didn't exist. I would cause myself and other people quite a bit of harm. Like it's the same logic. It's the same way of looking at it. There's spiritual physics and there's physical physics. And there's physics to the actual world. And the reason why it's like I feel so passionately and stick to sin is not missing the mark is because when I when I talk to somebody who's like, there's responsible usage of porn. Like you can responsibly use it. It's like, well, it may in the short term offer a solution to a problem that you're currently having. I remember an article that came out with John Mayer right after the Tiger Woods situation came about, that Tiger Woods was having all these affairs and that he was addicted to sex. John Mayer was like, you know what you should have done, Tiger? This is what I would do all the time. This is what I continue to do all the time when I get into tricky situations with tricky women. So I just go into the bathroom and then I masturbate. And then I'm okay and I'm done and I can get out of the situation. I don't have to fall into sin. I don't have to fall into like this terrible situation. Like that's the idea around responsible usage of porn. It's like, well, I have this attraction to this person at work. I could engage in it, or I could just go use porn. That's responsible use of porn. Or my wife's not engaging with me sexually. Instead of me looking elsewhere, I'm just going to responsibly use porn. Like that will utterly destroy you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but from the inside out, it will destroy you. It's not because I'm anti pleasure or anti whatever conceivable thing you want to have. It's literally because it will destroy you. It will rot you from the inside out. That pleasure will come back in a different way and be ruined. C.S. Lewis talks about how grace and sin work backwards. That the person who's in hell will have said they've always been in hell because even the pleasure they enjoyed from the sin that they experienced on earth will be a part of the journey to eternal pain and suffering. And therefore it will lose its merit. And the same thing about grace and in heaven, that the person who's in heaven will say, I've always been in heaven. And even all the crap that they went through in their life and the pain and suffering that they went through in their life, they will be like, all of that conspired to get me to here. Therefore, all of that is redeemed. Therefore, I can be grateful for every inch and every crevice of my life because grace works backwards. It's like that is what we're talking about. We're talking about an eternal perspective on your life. And not only does it work in the here and now, but it actually works for all of eternity. And I think that suffering because of sin is such an underrated topic. Like I don't want you to do that because it will cause you immense suffering. And so I that's why I rebuff. It's the one thing, it's really the one thing that I get riled up about when I hear Jordan Peterson talk about sin as missing the mark. I'm like, oh man, it is, but it's not because
Mhm.
it reverses like a boomerang and kills you. Like that's the problem with sin.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to understand is okay, like the initial act of a sin is to miss the mark, but what you're talking about is, and what you want to emphasize, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is almost like the severe consequences of missing the mark. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it's not a game, right? It's not like, oh, I just missed the mark. Like the arrow was headed in the same direction. It's like um there's no consequences to the definition of missing the mark.
Hmm.
And there's very real definitions to missing the mark. One of my favorite things that Jordan Peterson will say is like nothing that you do won't come back to you. I said that in a double negative, but everything you do comes back to you.
Hmm.
He's like, I've never seen it not come back to you. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's what we're talking about when we're talking about sin. And I get what you're saying is in, hey, there is a way, there is a path. And if you stay in the path, um, there's tremendous fruit to be born on that path, and there's tremendous goodness to be born on that path. And when you step outside of that path, you open yourself up to a world of hurt. It's not necessarily immediate, but you like open yourself up to it. And like I get that, and I totally respect that. There is someone listening to your podcast right now who is sitting in the rot of the mess that they've made, and it's like they know better than anyone else that it is there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it. And I'm the first word out of Jesus's mouth, Peter's mouth, John the Baptist's mouth, repent. All three of their ministries started with the same word, repent, for a reason. So they're like, this is serious stuff, guys. Turn your back on wayward ways, like, because this is really serious stuff. All three of them, their first word was repent.
Yeah.
And it matters. It really matters.
Yeah, repent as in turn around completely from your previous way of life. I mean, and I talk about alignment and misalignment. Like these are themes that I talk about. I mean, I brought up missing the mark, but ultimately when we're talking about the way that leads to life, when we're talking about aligning ourselves with God and the logos through which everything was created, we're talking about living an aligned life. Like living the Christian life is living an aligned life with reality, with truth, with the good. It's misalignment, which would be the result of sin. That is where that's where you experience, I guess you can say, all of the terrible and miserable hell that you can get yourself into. And like, yes, you're right. Like God gave us, it's like God gave us the way, and we have the free will and the choice to align ourselves or not. And it's this misalignment, which I think a lot of people live in nowadays, that they need to repent from. They need to align themselves with God, with the way that leads to life. And I like thinking about Catholicism and the sacraments and Christianity in that way, and not just as, I guess what I'm trying to move away from is just kind of like the, not the religious superstitions, I guess you can say, but just kind of the everyday cultural Catholicism or cultural Christianity of like, I go to church on Sunday, I do these things, and then I live a completely separate way. It's like, no, no, no. This is an encompassing of your entire life, and you're either aligned or misaligned um, along the way.
The way that the church talks about Jesus, um, is St. John Paul II in particular, is they essentially refer to him as the blueprint for humanity. That there are a number of reasons why God became man. And there's a couple of great saint quotes about that, like God became man so man could become like unto God. And like that's one of the best ones, is that it Jesus can elevate your life in every conceivable way. But him as his personhood, the way he handles emotions, the way that he handles conflict, the way that he handles um, uh, uh, difficulties, the way that he handles suffering, the way that he handles communication with God, the way that he handles rest, the way that he handles emotional distress, the way that he handles all these things. Jesus comes to earth, experiences everything that we've experienced, and then he shows us the way on how to respond to those circumstances and those events that make the most out of it for the people around you and for yourself. So it's like this idea that there's someone I can look to in how they lived and how they responded as a model for how I can look and respond to life right now. And one of the reasons why the world of psychology and therapy has so utterly missed the mark on a regular basis, is
And
that
yet
there.
and has suffered severe consequences for doing so.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But one of the reasons why is because psychology doesn't offer a blueprint for the human person. Psychology doesn't offer an answer of what it means to be human and how to live up to the standard of what human means. And so people are out there just making stuff up. Being grounded in the blueprint of Jesus and being able to look at Jesus and go, okay, how did Jesus handle, just as an example, how did Jesus handle anxiety? That's a really important topic, more and more so every single day. Like Jesus didn't repress his anxiety. Jesus didn't always pray parts of him that were anxious away. Jesus confronted it, validated his own emotional experience, and then chose to do the right thing anyway. If you look at the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was like, "This is what I'm feeling. I am feeling this." And he validated it in his prayer by saying to the Father, like, "I don't want to do this." But Jesus also models for us a healthy relationship with emotions because he's like, but just because I feel this thing doesn't mean I need to do this thing. I am not my emotions. I am not how I feel. I can actually make a choice that is different than how a part of me feels. And so he says the famous prayer, but not my will, but your will be done. It's like just because I feel this way, that's not the supreme that's not the supreme reality. My feelings are not the supreme reality. The supreme reality is what is God asking of me? And if God is asking me to do this thing, regardless of how I feel about it, I'm going to do it. And, we talk about negative consequences of sin. Think about the positive repercussions of Jesus doing that, just on a human perspective, of him being like, I don't want to do this thing. I'm scared of doing this thing. All of my emotions are telling me, don't do this thing. But God is telling me to do it. And so I do it. And it results in the redemption of being opened to every person who has ever lived in history. And on a smaller scale, it's the same thing for you and me. Just because our feelings try to push us in a particular direction doesn't mean we have to follow what our feelings are telling us. When we follow what God is asking us to do, both in revealed truth and also, you know, um, personal revelation through prayer, the tremendous good that emerges from that and the redemption of other people is actually truly astounding.
Hmm. Yeah, and that takes us back to something that you had said earlier when you align yourself with God and the life that He is calling you to, you give yourself up for what God is calling you to do. That is truly what makes your life. That's the adventure of your life. Like Jordan Peterson talks a lot about that's the adventure of your life. And that looks unique. That does not look like you had mentioned before, kind of the same story. There's the same sinful story over and over and over again of that mafia boss that consistently leads to destruction. Um, you brought up kind of all of the Christian heroes and how every single one of them, their the memory of them just burns. Like their life was hot. It was creative. It was unique. And I think that's very important to highlight because I think so many people are looking for that. And it's like, okay, you have to you have to repent. You have to turn your life around away from the way that the world keeps telling you to go because you see where that leads to. It has led and will continue to lead to destruction and misery and what you would say boringness for everybody. It's a universal truth that's being found out again and again and again over and over again, right? But it's like, look at what this way can do for you. And you mentioned the blueprint, Jesus as the blueprint. I had a really good spiritual conversation on this podcast with Father John Pietropoli, and I've talked about Christ as the logos, like logos. That's where the word logic is derived from. It can also be interpreted as story. Like when we talk about the story of Jesus, like the way of Jesus, the story that you want to align yourself with, that you want to live within, that is ultimately going to lead you where you ultimately desire and want to go. And I know that can be confusing because sometimes your wants and your desires can mislead you, but it's like it's interesting and maybe we can talk about this like the distinguishing between like your wants and desires on like a surface level on almost a sinful level versus like what your heart or soul is ultimately desiring or wanting or calling you to.
I St. John Paul II says something that I've been grappling with for a long time and really wrestling with. And he talks about how the first part is really cool. The second part is what I've been grappling with quite a bit. The first part that's really cool is like You and I, we don't just have a vocation. We weren't just made for a vocation to marriage, capital V vocation. We are a vocation. Like your essence, you as a human being, you exist as a vocation. And your existence as a vocation is to make the invisible God visible. That is who you are. You are an embodiment and an experience of God for other people. And that in particular, this is really heightened for you with your children. Your children are getting their understanding of what God's fatherhood is like through you. And there's nothing you can do about that. That is just like a basic reality. They are in the school of love that you are forming with your wife and hopefully with God. And that school of love is teaching your kids how to give and receive love. And they are implanting their idea of fatherhood and motherhood, of Jesus, Mary, Joseph, God the Father, the Holy Spirit. They are implanting their understanding of them based on you. And that happens in a really deep way when you have children. That happens all the time in every context that you're in. You are making manifest, or you have the opportunity to make manifest the invisible God. Like right now with you in this conversation, nothing will ever change that that is my primary vocation in dialogue with you, is to make the invisible God visible to you. And the same thing for you to me, right? Like that is what we're made for primarily. And then we express that, when we have the marital vocation, it's like the primacy of the original vocation of making the invisible God visible is clear to you. It is a demand of your vocation that you do that for your wife and for your children, first and foremost. In this way, St. John Paul II says that we participate in adding to the sacrifice of Jesus. Not that the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross and the life of Jesus is inadequate, but that we can contribute to that story. So I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but when a couple has a miscarriage, there's a difference between someone coming to your house who has never experienced a miscarriage and someone who has. And the someone who has, who can come in and communicate to you a lot of what you're feeling and empathize with you and understand where you're at and understand how you're feeling and help turn you toward God and make the invisible God visible in such a dark moment, right? That is adding to the sacrifice of Christ. That is adding to the sacrifice of Jesus. And so we literally have the highest conceivable value as being human beings, in that we can make manifest the love and goodness and power of God in each interactions of our day. That's our highest capacity. And for us to be distracted from that, for us to deprioritize that, is a misalignment. But when we're aligned, that's what we're doing.
Hmm.
That's what we're working toward. Like when we go to pray, it's like, oh, am I praying to get this thing off my chest? No, I'm praying so that my soul is filled with oxygen so I can go out into the world and make the invisible God visible. That's why I pray. There is a higher value to all of these things. And Jesus reveals them to us in a very clear way. Going back to our first part, which is like the Gospels, in a very clear and evident way. We just got to break it down and understand it and then try to apply it.
Hmm.
Does that resonate with you? Do you listen to that and you're like, man, that fires? The first time I read that, that fired me up. But I don't know. I could be alone. I was like, man, I am a vocation. That's crazy.
I It resonated very much so. You are the vocation. It's like when you do this, when you pick up your cross and follow Jesus, like he's inviting us. He's inviting us to follow him, to take up our cross. Like if you are to come after me, take up your cross daily and follow me. We are the vocation. We are, when we do that, we are a part of the story. Um, it's kind of like, I think a lot about this because, there are crazy things that go on in the world. And it's like, if I why would I give my life up for the faith? Why would I give my life up for Christ? Why would I give my life up to stake? Why would I stake my life on Christianity as the truth? And why is that important? Why, if someone had a gun to my head, why wouldn't I try to avoid it or, not answer the question? And it's like, because our responsibility is to be a part of the model, of the story. And every single time we give our life up for it, every single time we give ourselves up or give our life up for it, it adds to the story, it adds to the model, which eventually saves the world,
Mhm.
right? Which saves others and saves the world. So as you were saying that, I don't know, like I feel like that's a crazy thing to say. Like that's a crazy call. Like it's a, it's a, it is a daily moment by moment responsibility that we have to be the vocation. I've never thought of it that way, but I love that. That's incredible.
It's so absurd. It's like one of the things I think about is um like what does it mean? What does it mean to be a great man? Like what does it mean to be a great man? What does it mean to be a great provider, a great husband, a great father, and a great follower of God? Like I look at the Bible and I'm like, okay, who's good at all four of those things? Uh Saint Joseph, but he didn't say anything at all in the Bible. So it's like, how in the world am I supposed to do this? How in the world am I supposed to figure out a way to, be great at all those things? And in fact, I don't know that I've gone through a single day where I'm like, I crushed it in every single one of those areas today. Right? It's almost not possible, right? There have been days where I've worked 15, 16-hour days, and it's like I crushed work today. And I get home in time to say goodnight to my kids. And my son's like, I missed you today. And I'm like, oh, it's like, oh man. We have limitations in a certain sense as human beings, in that we can't be great at everything all at once. We can't be everywhere all at once. And we're never going to be perfect all at once. But God calls us to an astounding call and then has the grace to let us get better over time. One of my favorite scenes in the gospel is when Jesus, unannounced, doesn't even ask, just gets into Simon Peter's boat and just starts preaching to people, and then tells him to go out and cast his net into the deep. And then Simon Peter's reaction is like, I'm not worthy of you. Like, depart from me. I'm not worthy of you. And Jesus, he doesn't say like, oh, no, 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 you are worthy of me. You're good exactly as you are. He's like, you're a fisherman. I'm gonna make you a fisher of men. Don't worry. Like, follow me. I'm gonna make you a fisher of men. And he's basically saying to him, it's okay that you are where you are right now, provided you become a fisher of men over time. Like, it's okay where you are right now. I love you where you are, and I'm going to love you into who you can be. And Jesus, he sees us with the eyes of love, which is who we can be. But he also sees us with the eyes of reality. He knows who we are right now. And he takes a developmental approach. And he is with us and journeys with us in each step of the way. Because I can often feel like this is overwhelming. Okay, I've got to make the invisible God visible. I've got to be like Christ shining love to the world. But I have this giant plank in my eye that I can't seem to get out, let alone share the love with people. It's like, it's okay where you are. Where you are right now, you have to address the plank in your eye. It's okay that you're not at this end destination yet where you're, the living embodiment of God's grace and God's love, provided you do your best to always try and move forward, even when you get knocked down, that you get back up again and you keep trying and you keep pressing forward and you keep trying to get better. It's like, how do I get better as a husband today? How do I get better as a father today? How do I provide at a certain level without money totally corrupting my soul and consuming my life? Like, how do I do these things? How do I be responsible? How do I get better again and again and again? Like, that's the Christian life. This incredibly compelling vision, then this awesome father who's like, I'm going to walk with you the whole way. Not this nonsense that we get from the culture, which is like, you're okay where you are. You don't have, just live your truth, do your thing, you're fine where you are. It's one of the most depressing messages we could ever give someone. It's like you're good where you are. who you are right now at 22, it's totally fine if you're 42 and you're exactly the same. Like, no, that would
Hmm.
be tragic.
Hmm.
That would be tragic because your 15-year-old son doesn't need 22-year-old dad. He needs 42-year-old dad, right?
Hmm.
He needs you.
Hmm.
And that's what I love about Jesus. It's like he combines this incredibly compelling vision with I'm going to be with you the whole way. And I'm not going to let go. I'm not going to walk away with you. I'm in it with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that example that you use of Peter. So, I mean, from that moment where he said to him, "I'm going to make you a fisher of men." Like, think about the journey that he went on. Like, it was an up and down journey. Like, at one point, he Jesus told Peter to get behind me, Satan, like get out of my way. At one point, Peter is the one who, when Jesus told him, "You are the rock upon which I will build my church," he was the initial one who referred to him as the Messiah. Um, Peter was also, so it's like the up and down, right? And then Peter's also the one that denied him 3 times. But when it all came down to it, when it was all said and done, Peter was the leader of the church after Christ died and was ultimately there to I mean, you read Acts of the Apostles and you just read um, Peter became that fisher of men
Yes.
and then eventually died for Christ, right? So yeah, Jesus led him along. He led him along kind of a certain I mean incredible journey. It's kind of like we've been talking about. Like he led him along the adventure of his life once he gave his life up to him. But that didn't mean he became some perfect fisher of men right away. And I think that it's it and I talk a lot with my friends and my family about this, but it's like you hear the phrase like if a Christian fails in our culture, it's like, oh well, that's not obviously he's not a Christian, or like that's not the Christian thing to do. It's like, no, 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 no. What a Christian, I think the only distinguishing factor of a Christian is like we sin and we know that we sin, but what we do in every single moment is we acknowledge that we sin and then we resolve to amend our life because of it. And I think that's actually the mark of a Christian rather than someone who just doesn't sin, right? We're someone who's
Well,
constantly trying to realign ourselves after we fall into misalignment, right?
right. Everybody causes ruptures. Not everybody repairs.
That's right.
And the
Yep.
mark of a Christian is somebody who repairs and who creates a way. You know that talking about Peter too, like to me, the number one obstacle, I don't know what you think about this, but to me, the number one obstacle, and it's articulated over and over again in the Gospels. And Fulton Sheen's the one who brought my attention to this, but the number one obstacle to staying aligned with Jesus is suffering. It is the number one obstacle. Like, why does Peter, after he's like, "You are the Christ, you are the Messiah," why does he then, in hearing Jesus say, "I'm going to suffer, die, and rise again," pull Jesus aside and have the audacity to rebuke the Messiah, to say, "That can't be your mission, Messiah. You've got it wrong," right? Suffering. Why did Jesus have to really challenge and push back on John and on James and John, the sons of thunder? Because they wanted to sit at the right and left hand of Jesus when it came to his kingdom. And he's like, "You don't understand what the kingdom is. Like, you don't understand the suffering you're going to have to undertake." Like, why did Judas go and sell Jesus out? Because Judas was like, "I thought that this was going to be an earthly kingdom. Now that I know for sure this is going to not be an earthly kingdom, like I don't want to suffer in that way. I want to sell off. I want to sell high so that I can actually go live my life after this because I don't want the suffering." Why did the rich young man walk away from Jesus when Jesus was like, "You have to sell everything you have and follow me"? Because he didn't want to suffer. He didn't want to suffer the consequences of giving up everything that he had. It's like the reason why so much of our culture doesn't want to be Christian, doesn't want to follow the ways of Jesus, is because it is a path that in the beginning, there's a good amount of suffering in particular. There's a good amount of self-denial, self-mastery. There's a good amount of I'm going to go against the grain of comfort and coping to confront the brutal reality of my life so I can press forward and become who I was made to be. It's like suffering is the primary obstacle to being aligned, being faithful, and trying to follow Jesus. And I say that as someone who's like, what's my primary obstacle? to being more faithful and to like suffering unconsciously even. I don't want to suffer. And I have to create greater sense of awareness of the present moment in order to be like, no, 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 I will do this suffering because this is what God is asking me to do. So I think it's suffering. What do you think?
The question that I want to throw back at you, Jack, is, I mean, there's a lot of people that, sit and talk about suffering and say, you need to suffer so that in order for you to, and then there are people that are like, well, I'm actually at a deeper level of suffering. So, why should I listen? Why should I listen to you? Right. So, um, you've been through suffering though. So why don't you explain what you've been through and how that has been transformative for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, suffering is an important topic, a really important topic. It's a deeply personal topic, because to me, there is no real relativity of suffering. Like, I can look at something objectively for sure and say that um, someone who is starving right now, who's on the verge of like a friend of mine, he's going, I forget where he's going in Africa, but he's going someplace in Africa, and the priest is like preparing him, and he's like, "Hey, look, when we get off the plane, like you're gonna see people who are gonna die in the next 12 hours of starvation. Like you're gonna see that." And and that's like if you compare that to the fact that last night it was the 2 out of the last 3 nights I have been up with one of my children. Last night was with Maggie from 1:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the morning with a 6 a.m. wake up call, like with her vomiting on me, like they're not, in a sense, an objective sense, they're not comparable, but it's actually not really fruitful to talk about comparison of suffering and comparison of sin because it's actually super invalidating. Because you know what? It is hard. It is hard to operate on 3 hours of sleep and be like, no, this podcast that I want to do with Zach is really important. I want to bring my A game and I wish I had more sleep. Like that is legitimate. And so suffering is deeply personal. We have a great tendency to either overvalue our suffering or invalidate our own experiences of suffering. So when I share my own story of suffering, I very much know that like the spectrum of the suffering that it exists, it doesn't matter. What matters is this is the cross that God called me to carry. And the cross that he called me to carry, like it came at a pretty young age. I was 11, and I've always looked like this. Like if like a strong breeze could blow me over, like I remember my first encounter with your dad. He didn't even say hello to me. I was just going to help your brother move. And you couldn't have had one of your CrossFit friends come and help us move, like not even a hello. And
That's my
and
dad for you, though.
yeah,
How you like
100%. It was great. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be friends with this guy. But so like I lost 10 pounds I lost 15 pounds in 10 days. And I was 11. So I'm a kid. I have a buzz cut because I don't want to shower every day. And buzz cuts help you not shower every day. And I looked like I was dying, And we get inside this doctor's office, and this doctor is like, "You have Crohn's disease. It's this autoimmune disease, and you've got it pretty bad. But don't worry, I have access to the best medication in the world. I can get you down to 3 hospital stays a year, every year for the rest of your life." And my parents were like, "Come again? Like, what does that mean for his quality of life?" And the doctor was like, "You should consider that your son from here on out is disabled. Like, he'll never be taller than 5'1". He won't go away to college. He won't hold down a job. Like, he's going to be living with you until one of you dies." And it was like there was incredible physical suffering that was taking place at that time. And there was a lot of physical suffering that would come in the years that followed. But there was nothing like the psychological pain of someone looking at you and being like, your life is over. Every dream you've ever had is completely inaccessible to you. And I pretty much like quit on my life. I was like, well, that's that. I guess that's that. Thankfully, my mom didn't, and neither did my dad. And they were busting their hump trying to get healthy. And when I was 14, after missing over the course of 3 years, missing over 250 days of school, being in and out of just terrible pain and whatever. My mom just comes into my room and she's like, I've got two gifts for you. But first I want to talk to you. And she just sits down and she's like, look, I can't make you healthy on my own. I wish I could. I've been trying with my whole heart to make you healthy and I can't. And the difference is like you're not in it. You're not fully committed. And you need to be fully committed. I believe you can rise to the occasion of this. I think you can defeat this illness. I think you can live a full life, but not if you don't get in the game. And so she opens up. The first gift is this wall to ceiling, a floor to ceiling poster of Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston when he became heavyweight champion of the world. And it says, impossible is nothing at the bottom of it. And then she hands me the second one, and it's a dog tag. And on the dog tag, it says, uh, it's a it's a version of what Ali said about impossible. And it says, incurable is not a declaration, it's a dare. She's like, I dare you to make the most of this. I dare you to go all in. And I hope you take it. It's like mom mic drop moment, you know? And it was like that moment in time where she really challenged me. It was like, I need to enter into the school of suffering. My whole 3 or 4 years, I've been I've been hiding. I've been coping. I've been numbing. I've been disengaged. I haven't want to turn and look at this really ugly cross that's sitting here. And my mom was like, pick it up. If you pick it up and follow me, you have no idea what will happen. And I did. And like I'm 6 feet tall. I went away to college. I have a wife and children. Like I am the healthiest chronically ill person you'll ever meet. I've had one hospital stay in 23 years, instead of whatever that would have been, 69 or whatever it is. I think 69 hospital stays over these years. I've had one, and suffering and my cross became the source of incredible meaning, mysterious meaning, but incredible meaning. Instead of all of the standard worldly stuff as being attractive, having gone through what I went through, it was like, I don't want any of that meaningless stuff. I want the real stuff. I want the deep stuff. I want love. I want relationship. I want goodness. I want impact. And then, when I was 20, I met Jesus, and it was like, this is everything I've ever wanted and looked for. And so suffering it is such an obstacle because it knocks you on your butt. And I'll never know why I'm the one, not my twin sister or my older sister, who got Crohn's disease, or why I'm the one who got it relative to my cousins, or why I'm the one who even got it in my community. There'll be a mystery to it. But I also know that without it, my kids wouldn't exist. And of all the things I could say that I find meaning in, that would be the highest one. I remember literally like laying down next to my wife in bed with her pregnant with our first, and her being asleep, and her being really pregnant and like kind of snoring, and me just like smiling and thinking, I'm so glad it all happened. I'm so glad every inch of it happened. And it was my first, I mean, that was 5 years ago. It was my first encounter with like, oh, that's God's redemption. Like that's God's power. So is that what you were asking?
It is. So when you that story of your mom um coming to you and encouraging you and
Making the invisible God visible.
100%, it's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned in that story, you said I had this big ugly cross that I was refusing to pick up. What did what did you start to do? So when you decided to pick up that cross, what did that look like specifically? Like what did you start doing on an everyday basis?
So I will tell you what I know on in retrospect. I did not really know what I was doing. But in retrospect, having studied how you draw meaning from suffering, I can give voice to it. So I did not have this knowledge or this awareness when I was 14. So I want to give that caveat. I didn't know it, but I followed Viktor Frankl's three paths to meaning. and how you can draw meaning from suffering. So Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he talked about how human beings, I should say this, how he discovered the path to meaning and what it means to be human in a concentration camp and in Auschwitz and in his experience of surviving Auschwitz. In the worst, I think most people would say that the worst of human conditions and the worst of human circumstances may very well have been Auschwitz itself. In that context, he found meaning. And he developed a whole school of psychology out of that, out of finding meaning in a concentration camp. And he wrote down these three paths to meaning, and then created this psychology called logotherapy, this version of therapy called logotherapy. And the three paths to meaning, the first one is um, what he would call an encounter or an experience. So it's obviously a bleak and dark thing being in a concentration camp. He would reflect on beauty, reflect on love, and he would have either in his imagination or through his eyes, he would take time to reflect on something beautiful or something that elicited love within him. One of the high points of the book is him on a basically a death march, just envisioning his wife's face. And he would just find a way to encounter love. Or he would be like, I'm going to take time and stop, even if I get yelled at or smacked at, and I'm going to look at the sunrise. And I'm going to remember that there is still goodness and that the darkest night cannot extinguish a single candle and the light from a candle. Like I am going to hold on to that. And so what he would do in his logotherapy is he would help people create a vision that they could go to in their mind where they encounter love and where they remember love. And the way that I do this now in my own work is I'm like, think of an image from the Gospels. Think of a time when you've encountered God's love and hold fast to that in response to whatever suffering you're going through. For me, I would be like, okay, I am going to find something in my day to laugh at or to smile or to receive love in the context of another person. Like I am going to try to have an experience or encounter that is good or beautiful or loving. I wasn't conscious of this, but I literally would stop. I would go outside and I would like look up at a starry sky and take some deep breaths. Like I would literally do this at like 14 years old because I'm like, I need to encounter something magnificent today, like just something beautiful, not this ugliness. The second path to meaning is, um, to me, is the most is is one of the most powerful. Um, it's instead of instead of thinking about you, you turn your life into a self gift. So the second one is service. Like, how can I be of service to another person today? I remember like noticing that my mom was having a particularly rough day and deciding to make her a cup of tea, even though walking 10 feet was like tears to my eyes level pain. It's like I'm still gonna get up and make her a cup of tea so that when she gets home, like she has this tea and she knows that like I'm gonna do something in service to her. I started cleaning the house. Like I'm 15 years old, like vacuuming the house. I'm like, I have to do something in service of my family today. I can't just wallow in my own mess today. And that goes back to, you know, our purpose in life is to make of our life a self-gift. It's not to self-master, it's to make ourselves a gift. And then the third path to meaning, which is the most powerful to me, is attitude. So Viktor Frankl calls this the last of human freedoms. The last of human freedoms is your attitude in response to life circumstances. You and I don't have to respond the way that we respond. I'll give you a trivial example. Like you're driving down the road. Obviously, you're in Northern Virginia, so there's lots of traffic. Somebody cuts you off. You're in a rush. You don't have to respond by flipping them off.
I don't.
You don't. You don't have to respond that way, right? You don't have to be like, oh, just my luck. I'm going to be even later now. And then you hit the light and you're like, oh, this is just me. I never get any breaks. My life sucks. I'm never going to make anything of it, right? Attitude. What is your response to the circumstances of life? What is your response to the circumstances? And and I started changing my attitude. It was like, no matter what comes my way today, I'm going to make the most of it. Whatever it is, I'm going to make the most of it. And and it was an attitude of, instead of me being a victim, it was, I still have a life to live, even in this mess, and I'm going to make the most of it. And I do have a way to get healthy, and I'm going to make the most of that way. I'm going to make the most of that path. I'm going to pour myself into that thing, and I'm going to do what I need to do. And even if I get a sign that things are going in the wrong direction, I'm not going to pout about it. I'm not going to throw things at it. I'm not going to be like, woe is me, or fatalistic about it. I'm going to be like, okay, a learning experience, another piece to the puzzle. And I'm going to keep adding pieces of the puzzle until I'm healthy. And when my attitude changed, I mean, that was pretty much the ball game. That started the whole path. That started the whole snowball for me. It was like attitude change, which opened me up to service, which opened me up to encounters of beauty and love, which brought me back and reinforced my attitude. And it just became this cycle. And it's something you can duplicate in your life. Like, if you're having a tough stretch, how can I experience love? How can I serve another person? How can I shift my attitude in response to these circumstances to make the most of it?
So you mentioned, with regard to that shift in attitude, you started doing things that would lead to you getting healthy, and you started to learn from things, and you started to figure out what you needed to do in order to get healthy. So as far as like those specifics, because from what I understand, like you have a pretty extreme diet, don't you? Like you eliminated a lot of things, like eliminated a lot of things that you don't eat, right? So like what, and I'm going somewhere with this. Like, can you drill down like actually to some of the specific things, like literally like moment by moment on a daily basis, that you started to realize helped you?
I had to experiment. So I was operating within a framework called the specific carbohydrate diet, and my illness was so severe. My version of Crohn's was so severe that the basic framework of the diet wasn't enough for me to get healthy, and I had to drill down to essentially eating a grand total of 12 foods. That includes spices for about a decade. So that means waking up every single day and eating a variation of the same meal every single day. It means going to an ice cream party when you're 12 and eating an overly ripe brown banana that most people throw out while everybody else is eating ice cream. It meant going to a Super Bowl party at my uncle's house and everybody's eating pizza and drinking soda, and I'm warming up um, unseasoned chicken breasts and steamed green beans, and eating that same meal every single day. There are other little things too, like being really conscious of my sleep, having a food journal, and actually becoming attuned with my body to the point where, in the beginning, because I was disengaged with my illness, I wasn't paying attention to the little twings and bangs within my own system that were like warning signs, like, hey, you need to shift something, otherwise you're going to get really sick. So I would just be like living my life, and then boom, I'd be knocked out for 6 months. And so what really changed is my awareness of what was happening in my body because of the food journal that I was putting down. Like, this is what I ate, this is how I felt. And so, like, keeping the journal, I had to pay real attention to my body. I had to learn to really listen to my body. And it was like, okay, I need extra sleep now, or I need to pull back on the diet, or I need to eat less of this food or more of that food. And that's what dwindled down to the 12 foods that worked. That's what dwindled down to the amount of sleep that I needed in order to be okay. That's what dwindled things down to me being like, whoa, 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 I'm getting red flags. I need to do something different. That's what brought us to a supplement like vitamin D, because it was like, something is happening in the winter. Something changes. Something changes in the battle and the way that my body responds from November to March that's different from April to October. And the doctor being able to be like, oh, well, one of the things that's different is sunlight. So like, maybe we should get you some vitamin D. And all those things ended up being real game changers, but it was because of radical adherence to the diet and then learning to listen to my body.
So you mentioned that doctor who said that he would prescribe you with these certain prescription drugs and stuff like that. Do you currently take any medication for the Crohn's disease that you have?
Nope. I've been in remission for 12 years. No medication. I haven't had any medication since I was 17 or something like that.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear to everybody, I did not know the answer to that question before I asked it. So, but here's what I think it comes down to. Like, I think this is it. That is your cross that you were given to carry, your specific cross, right? Like that is a heavy burden. That's a heavy burden that you've had to suffer through. But by facing that suffering, taking it on head on, accepting that burden as heavy as it is, facing the truth about that burden, and literally picking up that cross daily. And those look like real, specific, actual things, like with regard to sleep and diet and attitude and service, all of those things that you mentioned, like that is your daily cross. So when we talk about this thing called Christianity, this way of life, when we talk about Christ, we're not talking about esoteric ideas. We're talking about something that is real. We're talking about like these are like actual daily things that you have to do to keep yourself aligned, right? Like it's the carrying of your cross is something real, and every single one of us suffer in in some way. Like my way looks different than your way. And I like how you said it's not all relative because to each individual person, like whatever they suffer from, like is it feels heavy. It does. Um, but it's when you face that suffering, when you face the truth, when you take on that suffering, like in your example, like not only have you saved yourself, like you've gotten yourself better, you've gotten yourself healthier, but you've also given a model to others who may suffer from something similar. You've given them a model that they can then save themselves from or become healthy from, right? Like you provide an example and a model to other people about how to move themselves upward and closer to God and health
So there's
and
lots of people who will come to me because of the work that I do and be like, I'm having trouble discerning God's will. Like, what do you think God's will is for my life? Like, okay, well, do you have a job? Yes. Like, do you have a family? Yes. Okay, what does your day have to look like tomorrow? It's like, well, and they normally give me like some meetings or something like that. No, 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 no. Like, what do you need to do? Like, moment by moment. And I'll literally walk them through it. Like, you've got to get up at a particular time. Like, you've got to eat. You've got to get dressed and take care of your body. Maybe you've got to work out. Um, then you've got to interact with your family members. And then you've got to make your way to your job. And then you know what your duties are in the context of your job. And you've got to work. And then you've got to finish your work and you've got to return home. And again, there's relationships, there's surprises, there are things that happen all throughout your day that you can't plan for. You've got to go to sleep at a particular time. You've got to decide what to do with your free time. All those things are God's will for your life. Like, oh, I just don't have, any meaning in my life or any this or any that. Well, go and do your life well. Like, take care of your body, exercise, eat well. You've been given a temple that is your body. Take care of it. You've been given people, as hard as they may be to love. You've been given those people to love. Go and love them. Like these are the basic tenets of God's will for your life is to handle the responsibilities of the circumstances that you're currently in. If you're a student, like do your homework, study for the test, be respectful of your teacher, be a good friend, pray. Like all these things are manifestations of God's will in the same way that our particular suffering is. So every single day, part of my suffering is a self-denial of not eating any of the things that I can eat that I can't eat that my family is eating. Like that is part of the suffering. that takes place. And that's God's will for my life. That's the cross that's before me. And we can overcomplicate it. And we can be like, oh, God's will is only in things like what Mother Teresa does. It's like, no, it's in the real flesh and blood of your day.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that's where it is. If you can start making the most of your day, sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I mean, it reminds me a lot of, so the way that I start my day, and it might be, a little, call it extreme, whatever, but for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, I evaluate myself based on, basically 10 daily inputs, like what time I wake up, whether or not I prayed, whether or not I evaluated my day. I have specific work inputs that I need to do every single day. Did I love my Did I lead my kids with love? Did I lead my wife with love? Did I get to bed with my wife? We like to go to bed at the same time. That's something that's important for our marriage. So all of these things make up my daily inputs. And I literally evaluate myself and I give myself a score
Cool.
out of 10 every single day, every single week. And I evaluate that over the course of every single year. And I have this planner that I've built for myself that I can take back all the way over. I think it's seven. I think I have seven planners fully completed. And basically my only goal is to get 90% of my inputs executed every single year. Like that's my goal because I know that if I do those 10 little daily inputs, which I consider my daily cross, if I pick up that cross daily and I just execute my 10 little daily inputs, then God will take care of the rest, right? These are little things I'm responsible for in accordance with my vocation. And if I do them, I'll end up where ultimately God wants me to be, right? So I
So
think,
powerful, man. That's so powerful. It like so many people talk about Jesus. Like I don't like religion, but I love Jesus, right? Jesus was deeply religious, man. Jesus prayed 3 times a day.
mhm,
Jesus Jesus went through the rituals of examination of conscience. Like Jesus did all these things that you're talking about, like the non-negotiables of a religious life that we all are called to have: eating, sleeping, praying, serving, loving. And those are like God is in charge of outcomes, we're in charge of effort. And religious practices, these burdensome religious practices, they're actually designed for us to do those essential 7 things really well.
yeah.
So
And I'm, I'm,
you're a
I'm actually,
religious man, and that's good.
yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up the religious practices because actually one of the things that I've started to integrate into all of this as well. So like I have the daily inputs and then maybe I'll have some like weekly targets. Like I want to make sure that we got 7 out of 7 in waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning every single morning. I actually wake up at 5:27 a.m. every morning because that's my wife's birthday is May 27th. And it gives me motivation to wake up at 5:27 because it's waking up early and my life isn't about me. So, but
That's
it makes
cute.
it worse. It makes it worse when I snooze the alarm and then my wife's like, what the heck? I guess your life is about you now, right? But in any case, speaking of the religious practice, something that I've actually put into as a weekly, I have it as a weekly goal is to receive the Eucharist every single week, right? So to make sure that my life is aligned and I'm avoiding sin so that I can receive the Eucharist every Sunday. And having that as kind of an aim, I would say as a primary aim every single week, also ensures that um, I'm living aligned with God, right? And if I need to go to confession and utilize the sacrament of confession, I do that if I need to. Like if I miss the mark, right? Or if I sinned over the course of that week. But I think having that weekly aim and ensuring that alignment, that's something that I've integrated as well. And I think it's also critically important.
What I admire so much about that is like the most of the saints have come from religious life. They've not come from um they've not been married people or single people um or even like diocesan priests. They have been religious. They've been
Mhm.
religious people.
Mhm.
Um nuns, priests, brothers, things like that.
not from the married, like small business entrepreneurial background.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not. And part of the reason is because religious orders have a mechanism for advocating for their people to be canonized. But one of the main reasons is that there's a system of accountability
Hmm.
to adhere to a regimen
Hmm.
that is most conducive to making the most of your life.
Yeah.
And what you have done is you've created a system of accountability to apply the principles of spiritual growth to your daily life in a way that is meant to expand steadily, incrementally, like your capacity for love and for relationships and for life. That's what's so it's brilliant for to me. It's like is it foolproof? No, but it's such a strong step in the right direction of being able to do that and examining your day and having an understanding of what brings out the best in you. I remember when I first started waking up at 5:30 in the morning and starting my day with prayer and writing before I talked to anyone at all. Like prayer, reading, writing. If I did those three things to start my day before anyone else wakes up, before I have to talk to anybody else, holy smokes, was I a better, more enthusiastic, more present person.
Hmm.
It was like, where did this come from? When I didn't start my day with technology or end my day with technology, it was like, what is this?
Hmm.
There's a reason why religious orders work. There's a reason why a regimented rule of life gets the most out of you. There's a reason why discipline actually leads to tremendous amounts of freedom. Because instead of you being enslaved by your own passions and wants and desires, you actually do something every morning in honor of your wife that sets the standard for your day. That's like, I must decrease, they must increase.
Hmm.
And that's, man, I love that. You gotta like formalize that planner.
Well, I've thought about that, but what's the difficult part about that is everybody's inputs are going to be different, right? And I've actually, in all fairness, I've had a number of people that have asked me to do it, and I've created actually specific planners for those people, right? So I kind of go through it with them, and they come up with their, I think 10 to 12, or I think one person even has more than that, daily inputs, and I put them together for them, and I've given it to them. Haven't sold any copies of it, but yeah, I mean, I think what I like about it, I don't want to water it down by like producing it on a mass scale, for example, because I think that kind of decreases the potency of it. But I don't know if there's an avenue for me to do it so that it can be a custom option for each person, which I'm sure you can do. I just haven't. Then I think that would be. I mean, I believe in it. I practice it myself, and I have for a long time. I mean, I say 10 years. I actually formally created like the actual planner about 7 years ago, but I can go back and look at like different versions of it from about 10 years. But what I like about what you said is that, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. Like I said that one of my favorite quotes, or one of my favorite passages from the Gospels, is, and I forget what parable it's from, but again, it just ends with, "Well done, my good and faithful servant, come share in your master's joy." And the desire that I have, or the goal, or the target, or the aim that I have in my life is to live a life worthy enough to be able to hear that when my life is over. So when it's all said and done, I lived a life worthy of those words that God would hopefully say to me. But that isn't something that is like esoteric, or um like pie in the sky type of goal, or thinking. It's like, okay, if I desire that to be my final life outcome, then I need to bring that all the way back, and I need to drill that down into the daily and the weekly. Um, and and so what does that look like? And that's kind of the whole thought process behind it. But I love how you said, and I've never even thought about it this way, is that all there's a system that produces saints, right? And a lot of people that live in, or that follow the vocation of a religious order, that's that's the most effective system for creating saints, right?
Hmm.
Um, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about kind of, I mean, it's obviously the system that I've created for myself in the hopes and dreams of maybe someday becoming a saint. But the way that you put it, it actually it is that for me. Like that's what it is. It's a different version of the system that obviously is created in these religious orders. But um I don't know, man. Like I think that every person every person has to identify every person has to identify those specific things that they need to do on a daily basis and a weekly basis to carry their cross, to be a saint within their specific area or vocation or even industry of life. Like I've said this many, many times. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of saints that are produced in religious orders, but we need saints across the board, man. Like we need dynamic, creative, effective saints, people fighting for the faith in all aspects of life, entrepreneurs, lawyers, singers, music, like, musicians, artists, like all across the board, like athletes. Like you see the impact that even like a few of these, you know, devout Christian or devout Catholic athletes have. And it's just like, imagine if, imagine if half of them were were on the path, right? Like imagine if half of them were fighting and were fishers of men, right? And I think that's the that's the exciting opportunity that I think the church has in this culture. And I think it's exciting to be able to have, and this is a good aspect of social media and kind of the mass evangelization that we talked about earlier. Like we have the opportunity to to win souls, man, and to fish men through these channels and through these mediums.
So having a system and a process that holds accountability is extremely, extremely useful and important. It is not the most important or the most essential ingredient toward becoming who God made us to be. And 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 to me, and what my experience has been like in walking with people is that the most essential ingredient is to operate from a base perspective that I'm loved and there's nothing I can do about it. That Jesus came to save, he came to redeem. And even if you were the only person on earth, like he would have come just for you. There's a deeply personal nature to Jesus's coming and dying and rising. Deeply personal. And him as the blueprint communicates this in a really important way. Like what did he do before he entered into the great temptation of the 40 days and started his ministry? Um, he he heard the words of God the Father. This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. That is the base of his whole journey to his death, the whole foundation of it. What we can understand as an essential component to Jesus's regular prayer life was reconnecting with the love of the Father. There are only three times that God the Father breaks through the normal conversation that he has with Jesus to share his words with us. And two of the three begin with, "This is my beloved Son," an affirmation of who Jesus is. You're loved. You're loved. When we operate from a secure base of, I am loved, I cannot earn that love, I cannot lose that love. I just go out. I am free to go out into the world and make the most of this life. I am free to go out and make mistakes and be imperfect, but strive to be worthy of the life I've been given. And so many of us don't try and strive for the life that we've been given because we don't have this core base of like, you're loved and I'm not going to leave you. I poked fun at your dad because your dad's fun to poke fun at. And because he's, a unique individual. But every Costello I meet, like, what do I know? Like, rock, rock solid sense of self and sense of security that I can go out into the world and make mistakes. I can go buy a bunch of Jimmy Johns and see if I can create franchises and then pivot off that work and go on to a new thing and be entrepreneurial and risk things and make and take chances and try and find my way in this life. And you know what? There's a rock who's standing behind me who's like, I believe in you. And every single one of us needs that rock in that foundation. And the most important job that you have as a dad, the most important job that I have as a dad, the most important job I have as a man is to instill that in my children because that's the basis for doing the bold thing, which is setting out and trying to chart the course of the way because the way is hard and the way is scary and the way is deeply meaningful for sure, but it is hard and it is scary. And it's often like you're jumping off a cliff and you don't know if you got a parachute that works. You're just jumping. And and it's like love is the basis for it all. Deeply personal love. And so much of the crap we see out in the culture and out in the world of people acting out are hurt, broken people who have been wounded in relationship and have not had the chance to be healed in relationship. And that's the most essential ingredient to me is that loving relationship with God. And then, it's like giving steroids to Barry Bonds, what you're, the the structure that you put on there. It's like, yeah, you because you're loved, you were really good. Hall of Fame human being. You put structure to it and you're soaring as a man. You're soaring as a person. And that's amazing.
I like how I talk a lot about this with my wife because we talk about um I guess just some of the risk taking um endeavors that I mean I would say I personally am not phased by. Um and you're 100% right. You're 100% right in that both both my faith in God and having a very strong nuclear family with two parents that took the faith seriously, practiced the faith, taught it to us, prioritized it over everything else, stayed together, are still together. I think all six of us, all six of my siblings, I'm one of six siblings, we're all still practicing the faith. Um, that right there is it provides a rock solid foundation for us to then go out into the world and know that we can take risks and know that we can stumble and fall and that we always have kind of a home, we always have this home base, we always have this rock that we can return to. And it does, I mean, it does give us all tremendous confidence. And I think that I mean that just goes to show like the critical importance too, though, of the nuclear family in our culture, and like that institution is completely under attack in this day and age. I mean, we talk about the spiritual battle. Like, if you were to go about, destroying a civilization, where would you'd go after the youth, and then you would go after, I mean, husbands and fathers, and you'd go after the nuclear family, right? Like that the dismantling of the nuclear family, like I believe, I mean, from a spiritual battle perspective, like that is the enemy's most effective um weapon, right?
You have a bunch of people running around in the world right now who like when you talk to somebody who is not risk averse like you, what you say isn't like, it's okay, God's got this, everything's going to work out. Your tone is like, even if the worst case scenario takes place, all will be well.
I'm good.
It's
Yeah.
not like it's not like,
Yeah.
oh, don't worry about it. The worst case scenario isn't going to happen. It's like, no, the worst case scenario may happen.
Yeah.
I'll be good. We'll
Yeah.
be good. All will be well. I and I am looking at this full on, eyes wide open. The worst case scenario may very well happen. I may start a business and the economy could tank and we could lose everything. We'll be
And
good. We'll be good.
and
And we'll be
yeah,
good.
right.
We'll be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And And not like we'll be good in that, oh, we won't have suffering, like we won't lose that. No, no, no. Like we may lose everything, but we won't lose the most essential things in this life. And just because that worst case scenario may happen doesn't change the call. Like the call
Yeah.
remains the call.
Yep.
And that's why, you talk about the nuclear family and you're alluding to sort of the um this attempt to really undermine masculinity in particular and undermine the male genius. And and you have these TV sitcom dads who are basically like the model for masculinity is being a good puppy, a good, faithful, reliable, present puppy who just does what he's told and shows up, makes a bunch of jokes, and makes people feel good about themselves,
Mhm.
as opposed to what it truly means to be a father and what it truly means to be a man, which is to provide this secure base in your family where it's like, even if the worst case scenario happens, you'll never lose my love.
Mhm.
Even if the worst case scenario happens, we'll never be separated from the love of God. No power, no principality, no nothing can stand in the way of our God. That is part of the masculine genius and the necessity of being a good, strong father, because you have all of these people who are running around the world right now, completely scared, lacking total self-confidence, and lacking a total sense of self. And so much of that is because they haven't had a real man step in and be a part of their life and say, this is the best way to live. This is what I'm calling you to. This is what I'm living. And our mutual friend, you had him on the pod, Father Jonathan Meyer, when he took over the whole county of Dearborn County, one of the first things he said is, it can no longer be acceptable for us as men of the county to allow a strip club to exist. We cannot say that's okay to the women of our county, and we have to pray and work to shut the strip club down.
Mm.
It's like that's what the society and culture has been missing.
Mhm.
That's what real masculine power in virtue looks like. Not toxic masculinity, because there certainly has been toxic masculinity, and certainly not this soft peddling puppy dog fatherhood that doesn't actually stand firm and say, this isn't good. Like it's if we had strong families and real men in our culture, OnlyFans wouldn't be selling right now for $1 trillion. It wouldn't exist because we would never find it acceptable for our women to play that role in life. We would never find it acceptable. We would never allow ourselves to treat another man's daughter like that, ever. We would never exploit her in that way. But we have, and this is what we've got. And this is
Yeah.
why this next
It
generation of men, we need to have that firm foundation of love and truth and goodness.
Yeah, I mean, it would both. I mean, speaking of OnlyFans, it would both drain the market, so it would get obviously men out of
Yes.
the. It would cut off the demand for it. But when you have again strong fathers, strong nuclear families, there is a high percentage of these women that decide to do OnlyFans that did not have a good relationship with their father. So it would cut off the demand. That would also cut off the supply as well.
Yes, because she would know, because she had a father who was like, I'm never going to treat you as a means to an end, ever. And it's never okay for anyone to treat you, daughter, as a means to an end. And she would know that. And
Hmm.
she would get into this context and she would be like, yeah, these men give me all this money to use my body and my beauty as a means to some pleasurable end. She would be like, that's degrading of my value as a human being, no matter how much money I'm given. And she would know that, and she would never have to endure what will come on the other side of that when you're no longer beautiful, when people no longer want you for your body, when you don't find value in that and you feel worthless. Got a ton of money, but you're empty because
Hmm.
you've just been around people who just use you your whole life. A good father never allows that to take place. He fights every day to stand between his kids and that type of thinking. You never, ever allow, including me, to use you as some means to an end. Ever. It's completely unacceptable.
Amen. Well, Jack, we're at the 2 hour mark. So I feel like we could keep going though, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we have, even more to talk about. I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface there of masculinity and fatherhood. So we'll have to figure out another time to reconnect and get another conversation done. But for now, where can people find you? Let people know website, social media, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at thecatholicmentor.com, thecatholicmentor.com, and it's that handle across all social media is the Catholic Mentor. So you can find me there and the people that I work with. And I just released a new course called Rise: How to Draw Meaning from Suffering. And it's a 5 week experience that I really walk alongside people on the way in which God helps us draw meaning from our suffering. And I teach it through the lens of St. John Paul II and Viktor Frankl, who I mentioned here. So would love for you to be a part of that. It gets released formally on the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I'm hoping for the blessing of his heart on the experience for everybody who goes through it. But it's great talking with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know that whether our next conversation is on camera or over the phone, I'm looking forward to it.
Me as well, Jack. Well, thank you again for joining me, and I'll make sure that I put those links to those sources that you mentioned down in the show notes of this.
Thanks. Appreciate you, Zach.
Thanks, Jack.